I'm Janet Austin, CEO of the ywca Metro Vancouver, and I want to start my talk by asking you to reflect back to the 2013 BC provincial election and remember the way in which the two dominant parties positioned their campaigns. The BC Liberals successfully ran on a jobs and economy strategy framed around the slogan, "A debt-free BC." At the time, I was curious about what jurisdictions might actually be debt-free. I did some quick research, admittedly not exhaustive, and found 3: the Sultanate of Brunei, and 2 tax havens, the British Virgin Islands and Liechtenstein. So really, the idea of a debt-free BC was a kind of magical thinking. But the message was simple, well executed, and ultimately successful. On the other hand, the BC NDP championed that old workhorse of election rhetoric, change. In this case, change for the better. Central to their strategy was a conscientious effort to be fully transparent and cost the platform, a level of detail that appeals only to the most policy wonkish among us and fell largely on deaf ears. Now, I don't mean this as a criticism of either party. I have enormous respect for people from across the partisan spectrum who step forward to serve in public office. My point is that politicians respond to incentives. We elect them when they tell us what we want to hear, and therein lies the problem. We, the electorate, demand simple, immediate solutions to complex problems at little or no cost. Concerns about taxation cast long shadows in politics and seriously constrain the ability of political leaders to deploy long-term strategies. Politicians must simplify and spin their messages and sometimes make promises that are impractical in order to win the right to govern. Too much detail, too much ambiguity, and yes, sometimes too much honesty can spell disaster. I refer you to the fate of former Prime Minister Kim Campbell, who during the 1993 federal election famously responded to a reporter's question with the quip, "An election is no time to discuss serious issues." She had only meant that 47 days were not sufficient to tackle complex matters, and in fact, a 4-year term is often inadequate. But her comment was perhaps a bit too honest, and she was vilified for it. The Conservatives lost 154 seats, and Jean Chrétien's Liberals formed a majority government. Now, the state of our democracy depends upon the knowledge and active engagement of our population. But it is increasingly undermined by factors like the rapid democratization of information and the resulting echo chamber, which insulates us from views that differ from our own, and by the growing influence of American political culture. I worry that we are increasingly disengaged from a system that requires too much political management, too much inflexible and combative rhetoric, and not enough nuanced and thoughtful discussion. Sadly, these factors breed cynicism and all that goes with it. There is sobering evidence of this in the Canadian results of the 2017 Edelman Trust Barometer, wherein we see that trust in government is at an all-time low, down a full 10 points over 2016, a stunning shift. 61% of people do not have confidence that our leaders can successfully address Canada's challenges, and fully 1/3 don't expect honesty from political leaders and would support politicians who they think can improve their lives, even if the politicians exaggerate the truth. How are we then to find common ground on complex issues when 55% of us simply don't listen to those with whom we disagree? What are our expectations for truth and civility in the seeking of elected office? How do we promote informed decision-making and rebuild trust in our political institutions? I believe the answer lies in taking deliberate steps to enhance economic and political literacy. It's perhaps unrealistic to expect a big shift in the adult population, but we can do more to prepare the next generation to manage the complex challenges they will inherit. Climate change, reconciliation, and the restructuring of our society flowing from accelerating technological advance. I'm calling for a stronger focus in schools on what used to be called civics, to build knowledge of the structure and functions of government, and to develop skill in diplomacy, argumentation, negotiation, and listening. I'm excited about BC's new economics and political science curriculum, but I'd like to see it given greater emphasis and deemed mandatory. I'm also calling for greater collaboration among political actors, for more respectful dialogue based on shared facts and agreed principles of engagement. I think it's possible that BC's minority government situation may push us in this direction, helping to cut through polarization and broker cross-partisan agreement on foundational issues. Further, we need to engage the institutions of civil society, boards of trade, social service agencies, post-secondary institutions in a sustained conversation about political trade-offs and controversial topics. At the YWCA, for example, we're working with the Ismaili Council for BC to co-host a forum on understanding Islam and combating Islamophobia, and perhaps you will join us. As individuals, I believe we must also take personal action to resist the echo chamber by seeking out diverse but credible information sources and making a conscious effort to engage with others whose views differ from our own. The West is leading the country in so many ways, and I would argue is well positioned to lead these changes. But the Western provinces are not a monolithic entity sharing a popular past and present. We encompass many different settlement patterns, histories, and economies. BC today is a province of cosmopolitan modernists, globalists, innovators, anti-authoritarians, oriented to the future. But our history was as a separate British colony that negotiated its entry into Confederation by extracting a promise from Canada to build the Transcontinental Railway, thereby unifying and defining our country. Today, the prospect of electoral reform is bringing new dynamism to the discussion of political ideas. And as we explore these ideas, I hope it will inspire a national conversation about measures that could modernize Canadian political culture. I will end by invoking Winston Churchill, who once famously commented that the best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. Success in the West, then, is really about the West taking the lead to improve the quality of public discourse, building a better Canada, and ultimately proving Mr. Churchill wrong. Thank you.